Hello, and welcome to another edition of the XP Billionaires podcast. Rafe, Sky, and Mal are here. We're going to give you some RPG conversational material that you could take to the dinner table, assuming everyone at the dinner table likes video games. Let's say hello to everybody. Let's say hello to Sky. How are you doing today?
I'm alive.
All right, that was a very long pause there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there.
Huh? That happens, so it's all good. All right, Mel, how are you today?
I'm all right. Maybe you're just checking. Like, am I? I don't know. This is a weird time. Hang on, let me find my pulse. Yeah, I'm alive.
That's about all I got after a 2-week heat wave.
Welcome to July 2020.
Welcome to 2020 in general. If it ain't one thing to kill you, it'll be another.
Yep, but this month, it's something new and exciting. Every month, it's something new and exciting now.
God, I don't even want to think about August. The leaves are going to start falling and they're going to be razor sharp. So, you got to watch out for your fingers and shit. I don't know.
Ooh, that's interesting. Like they all turn to metal overnight or something. Just like I don't know, can lids flying around all fall.
Oh,
there's a mental image.
All right. Well, let's get that craziness out of the way and let's talk about a little bit of different craziness. This week, I wanted to have an interesting discussion on DLC. So a few weeks back, we had a chat talking about optional content. And a lot of these forms of optional content these days are coming in the form of paid downloadable content. DLC comes in all different shapes and sizes and is regularly being defended as optional by game developers when there's evidence now that shows that DLC is pre-planned by the developers as a way to charge more for a full price game. And now that we're starting to see this more and more in RPGs. An example of this would be having the expansions coming out for Pokemon Sword and Shield. There's been a lot of discourse about whether or not those should have just been included in the main game. But, beyond that, I figure we could have a chat about DLC in general, especially as it's starting to creep into our genre. So first off, I want to ask you guys, what types of DLC do you consider acceptable? Like, what would you be more willing to actually spend money on when it comes to that kind of thing? Mel, let's start with you. Let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I feel like we've been playing with the idea more. I can't remember which game it is, but there's a new game coming out, and they're kind of increasing that cost for the new game by $10. So we'll see if it becomes more malleable in the future. But in general, I don't mind playing for DLC out front. People buy, fancy packages with, songs and costumes and all these things. And I personally, if it's planned out, would rather know that those things are coming. I'd rather waste a bit of money than kind of sit there and be like, is this one worth it? Is that one worth it? Now that the game's been out for 3 months, I have to go back, and even though I finished it, now there's a new plot that happens partway through, and I'd rather just enjoy the story as it's meant to be told. I usually prefer DLC if it's part of the main story, maybe it's a new area or a new string of quests. Horizon Zero Dawn does this, where they go to the north. But I also can enjoy DLC that's just for the lulz. The Citadel DLC is the one that comes to mind for most of us, where it doesn't really affect the plot. It just kind of lets you say goodbye to your friends. And that's nice. That's maybe the kind of DLC that makes sense to buy after if everyone was just like, no, it can't be over yet. And then you just, you have one last hurrah. But yeah, in general, just tell me what I'm buying. Tell me what you're creating. And if this is something that's this is the beta of the game, or, yeah, that's my thoughts.
It's interesting that you're willing to go that far. I do disagree to some extent in my perspective when it comes to DLC, because a part of my issue is that when it's pre-planned and there's situations where you don't even know what this new content is going to be at launch, like I don't want to necessarily just put money down on something if I don't know what it is first.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess I want them to just tell me up front. Like, the main game's going to be out on this day. 6 months later, we'll have a DLC. And 6 months later, we'll have another DLC. You can buy them all for this much. I mean, for me, I guess the question becomes, like, what's the scope of this game? Like, why isn't it included in the first version of it? Is that the timelines are too tight? Like, what's going on here?
And that makes total sense. And like game expansions that, like you were saying, if they expand the story, I'm definitely all for picking that up. But I'm not going to buy them until I can actually see what they are. Like one of my examples, like with when Dragon Ball Z Kakarot came out, it told us that there was going to be a season pass. There was going to be two major expansions to the story. Now, for something like Dragon Ball, you can assume what to expect they might be, but you don't know for certain. And one of the issues that I'm seeing this happening more and more is that it's like, okay, we've got this game, it's got a season pass, and it's going to have these extra things rolling out, but we're not going to tell you what they are. We just want you to buy it first. That's what concerns me the most is that like this is all planned. Like they're giving us so much content for a game, and I'll probably get into a little more of this later on, but it's you're giving us so much content. Is that content worth the say $80 that you're paying for the game right now for them to say, oh, that there's more coming and we want you to pay more for the game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like games are so bloated nowadays. It's just like, oh, did you really need to add that? Like, it's like you get the director's cut of everything, which can be good, but it can also be bad.
Well, yeah, we have to keep in mind that we also only have a finite amount of time on this world. We're not going to get to everything that we want to do as it comes out. So if you're putting, 80 to 100 hours on every game that we play, that's when it becomes a huge problem. And then to expect, these expansions to come out and do even more, like that's I don't know, it's nuts.
Well, that's just it. I mean, like, I do object mostly to too much DLC at launch because it does feel a bit like it should be in the actual game. But if they wait too long, I'll have already beaten the game and moved on. I don't know if there's a um, good option there,
Well,
really.
actually, like Horizon did a good thing. Like they released the game, they let people get through the whole game, and it was a long and bountiful game for you to get through, especially if you're trying to get everything in it. Like I know Mel, you said you had done that already, and then I don't know. It was 6 months to a year down the road. They're like, oh, okay, we're gonna add more story to this game. We're not ready to do a full sequel yet, but here's some more to keep you going while we consider this sequel. That like as long as you're not waiting too long, then you can announce something. But the thing is, don't tell us it's coming at launch. I think that's where we're really kind of seeing the overall corporate greed of it all, to be perfectly honest. If you tell us that, hey, here's the season pass, expect all this extra content coming, but you don't know what it is yet, and pay us an extra $40. Whereas I buy the game, I've enjoyed it, I've played it all the way through, and a couple months down the road and be like, you know what, that was a great game. And then you hear that this announcement that an expansion is coming out, like, okay, well, maybe I'll pick it up, I'll put the money down and go that route. That just makes more sense to me.
Yeah, I think I'm just less likely to go back to something, for some additional content once I finished it. Because like I don't know, I've gone through that emotional process of finishing the game, like it's like okay, it's done. I've moved on. DLC is just like, well, you're drawing me back, but you're trying to draw me back, but you need to give me a fair amount of incentive to go back to a game I've already clocked so many hours in. Like if it was a short game, that would be one thing. But longer ones, um, that's a little different, honestly. And unless the something really draws me to the new content, I don't necessarily care.
Well, I think that's the other thing too, is that like you have to really, really loved the game to want to play more of it after that point. And like I completely agree there. Like the expansion for Kakarot has come out, and I absolutely loved that game. But I I'd like to play it, but I don't. I've still got so much on my plate as it is. I don't even know if or when I'm going to get around to it. And this is why I think the DLC season passes expansions can be a bit problematic, is because there is no perfect time to reveal extra paid content in your game. I have thought about it over and over again, and I cannot find like the best possible timeline for that to happen for players to be continue to be invested in the game.
And this isn't DLC exactly, but I found myself changing my perspective a lot after I played some of the Telltale games that came out episodically. And I really liked that format. I didn't expect to, but there's something about kind of like that old school, like sitting on TV and like watching a TV show when it comes out, that it captured for me. And I wonder if DLCs could to benefit from that structure a little bit.
And I don't necessarily disagree with an episodic format for a game series. I mean, Telltale did a good thing there. We had Sky and I had Dreamfall chapters a few bad years back, which I thought was fine as an episodic procedure. But they're trying it now with Final Fantasy VII Remake when it comes to at least RPGs in this case. So we'll see whether or not that can maintain a level of success. And from what I've been told, Final Fantasy VII Remake so far was only about a 25 to 30 hour game when it came to the main story. So, that's about what I would expect from something episodic. I just not sure we should have expected the same price range for that based on it.
Well, yeah, but it's Square Enix. They're gonna charge you out the nose.
And people are going to pay for it. And that is not to disparage any of you listeners whatsoever. You guys do what you want with your money. That is totally fine. But I don't think $80 for 25 hours is worth it, in my opinion. That's all. I guess we can, in this point, we can move on overall, unless Sky, you had anything else you wanted to add.
Not really. I mean, it's got to be just meaty expansions, story, additional areas, like I need real reason to purchase additional content, not just random scraps of stuff.
No, and yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. And this also kind of leads into the next bit I wanted to talk about. You know, while game expansions are one aspect of the DLC, we're seeing a huge surge of different types of DLC. So it's not just that. Sometimes it's item packs, sometimes it's weapons, sometimes it's pay for level boosting, which is becoming a little bit more common in RPGs. So, like, how do you guys feel about that level of DLC that's coming out nowadays?
I mean, I go back to that thing where I just want to know what the situation is. Like, should I be prepared to play this game and let it go, or are you going to be giving me something in 6 months that I want to play again? I really only play for something substantial. I'm not going to pay for costumes or items. One of my few complaints about Persona 5 Royale is, Persona 5 Royal is that there's just a ton of pointless DLC items you get, and it feels like you're like a kid grabbing a grab bag of junk, and it doesn't feel like a reward at all.
Yeah, I mean, I personally wouldn't go quite that far, but yeah, certainly some of it seemed pretty pointless. And but then again, like that stuff, was free to download with the game, and when the game, because it was the original DLC package that came with the original version of the game. But I didn't buy that stuff with the original game, so they're still not getting my money.
Well, no, exactly. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it really has gotten a little too excessive at this point. Like, you know, first off, we're starting to see some games just now they come out in what I'm considering paid installments. So, you pay for this much of the game, you then pay for the next amount of the game. But like I was talking about season passes, I ignore those at release unless I know exactly what's coming from them. Then there's no point. Like I'm not willing to just prepay for something I don't know what I'm getting unless it's a game that I know is something I want. And that's when I pre-order a game.
Yeah, and I guess for me, like I tend to be like I don't have as much time to game as I like. So I tend to be pretty picky about my experiences, and that means that a lot of them are already coming with people saying this is a great game you'll love, and they tend to be pretty accurate. So if someone says you'll love this game, then I'm usually like, all right, fair enough. I'll throw in the money now. But if it's something that like nobody has seen yet, like that is kind of a different experience.
Well, exactly. And I just think back to an old written article that I wrote, and it's available on the XP Billionaires website. So check that out if you get the chance. But I basically attribute my dollar to gameplay value at $1 per hour of gameplay, and obviously that's a sliding scale. It's a give or take scenario, but if like I was saying with Final Fantasy VII Remake, you know that game should have probably only been no more than $40. Should have been half its base price just because of that time frame. I would have been more comfortable picking it up a lot sooner and not waiting until maybe later on in the game to give it a try. But that's just kind of what we're looking at. And if there is going to be that price increase with next gen games, like that's even more money that they can't get from us because they're already going to be putting that into the game. And that's going to be a huge problem. Now, one thing that I will say is a positive about this, and this is something that Sky talked about a couple of weeks ago, is that when it comes to, cosmetic DLC, costumes, and things like that, what we're now seeing is a significant amount of increases, especially with JRPGs, of purchasable, downloadable swimsuit costumes. So if you want swimsuits in your game, you have to pay extra for it. If you don't want them in your game, they're not there unless you want to buy them. So I think that's a point in its favor, especially from Sky's perspective.
Well, I guess.
I'm trying to find a positive in all of this. Really, really, I am. And so far, that's the best I've been able to do.
Well, I'm of two thoughts about it, because there's what you've said, and the fact that I think costumes are generally pretty pointless in terms of like purchasable DLC. Like if there's different outfits in the game that I don't have to pay extra for, oh yeah, I will go to town. But I am not gonna buy individual costumes at $1 here, $1 there, like that's just asking for trouble with your credit card. And it's just it's just so silly. It feels like they're really trying to nickel and dime you.
No, I think that's exactly what's happened. But, we also have to keep in mind that I would all three of us come from a time when all of these cosmetic items, all of these ways to dress up your characters were once included in the game. You didn't have to pay for them separately. And this was not that far long ago. It was the PS2 era. and the early PS3 era. I mentioned that with Resonance of Fate last week. Like, there's no reason for it. Like, the developers can put these little tiny things in the game, but instead they think that it's a better idea to charge for it.
And I think we better put the blame squarely where it's deserved. I don't think in a large number of cases it's the developers at all. It's the publishers.
Okay, that's fair. Yep, yeah.
Trying to to nickel and dime the consumer, and I imagine in a lot of cases that developers are just going along with what the publisher mandates in that regard. And what I will point to as proof of this is that the fact that the worst offenders when it comes to microtransactions, silly amounts of DLC, in most cases, it's the big publishers.
It is, and we're starting to happen more and more with a lot of the Japanese publishers too. Like, we're seeing it with Tecmo Koei now, a lot more with the Atelier series ever since they bought them out. Bandai has been doing it a lot, primarily with the Tales series. I've been seeing that significantly more there. Yeah. And I hate to say it, but I mean, Falcom's doing it too. So,
Falcom's their stuff's currently being published by NIS America.
True, but even when they were being published by Xseed, it was happening. It was there in the other games too.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's a universal rule, but what we are seeing is that the worst offenders typically are the largest publishers, and that's because it's greed. It's corporate greed.
Yeah. There's just there's no other explanation for it at this point, which is really unfortunate. All right, well, like I always do with our little discussions lately, let's have a little bit of fun and let's pretend we had some control over the situation. We know that DLC can come both free and paid. So if you guys did have control, what would you guys consider free and what would you consider to be paid DLC? What would you want to be that?
I mean, I'm not really interested in. I mean, this is the hard thing. Is like I'm not your audience for costumes and loot boxes and things like that. Like that's just not. I feel like it's sort of taking advantage of in a lot of cases kids who are like, oh, I have $1, I have $10, right? So I don't know. If I had to do it, I guess like I'd do it like Horizon Zero Dawn, put out one good one and be done with it, right? But make sure it's something that feels different. That's almost like a mini sequel.
And that's what they did with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, right? Is that they basically created another game. Full stop. It was a shorter game. The story depended on you playing Xenoblade Chronicles 2. But really, Torna was a whole separate... The Torna expansion was a whole separate game in most ways. And you know what? If developers want to do this and create like short additional experiences that have something new and interesting to bring to the table, I'm fine with that. That's not nickel and diming us.
Okay, one of the other, I guess, exceptions I would say to my stuff is that if I'm playing an online game that came for free, if I'm really enjoying it, I'll sometimes look for a little bit of a way to waste money. So like maybe I'll buy an extra, coin so I can go a bit faster, or I'll buy an extra scene. But in that case, like it's an amount of money I've decided. Like I basically said, well, I would pay $20 for this game, so I'll buy $20 worth of whatever currency this game has. But that does not feel like what the game wants you to do.
No, and I think there are some exceptions that can be made when it comes to free-to-play titles. They have to make money somehow. That makes a perfect amount of sense. But, when it comes to a fully paid title, that's a whole nother story. Now, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, to Sky's point, not only did they create an expansion that was shorter, they understood the time difference in terms of gameplay. They also priced it accordingly too. So I give them a lot of respect for doing it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically half the price of the full game, but it was literally like half the game's worth of content in addition, right? Like
Well, if
it
even that, like I remember you clocked over 100 hours into Xenoblade 2.
okay, yeah, that might be exaggerating a little. I think I cleared it in 30 hours, the expansion, but
Yeah,
still like 30 hours for like I don't know, it was between 40 and $50, I think.
yeah.
We're talking Canadian for those who don't know. But but yeah, I mean it was fantastically worth it. I would and and by doing that, they have encouraged my trust if they ever want to do such a thing again.
And that's really what it's all about is if a developer and a publisher can build that level of trust, then they're going to probably be more likely to succeed at earning revenue with their paid content.
Well, that's just it. I mean, don't be slimy, and people will reward you.
Well, exactly. I mean, I'm of the opinion, yeah, like I said earlier, expansion should be paid for. Um, and if you want to do something a little fun, like if you want to add like a multiplayer game mode to your game after the fact, or add in like a special online service, I think you can justify, asking for a little money to cover the server fees. Those are things that I think would be kind of cool, especially with an RPG. I'd love to see what kind of fun online things we could see in a specific RPG, whether it be an arena system, whether it's, a series of competitive mini games. Like if an RPG had a really awesome like TCG side quest or something like that, I want to be able to play other people with that. If you want to ask me for a couple of bucks to put that down, that'd be fine. Um, but yeah, everything cosmetic should be free there, and there should not be anything that speeds up your gameplay in a paid game. That's really bad. That just means that you're willing to skip the experience. And I don't think that's fair to developers. And if they developed the game to make you pay to speed it up, then they didn't develop the game right. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, they just created a subpar game. I just hate going to a game's page, say on the PSN or the Switch store, and seeing like this massive list of DLC, at $1, $2 a pop. Well, yes, it may be $1 or $2 here and there, but when the list is 20 items long, that is just ridiculous. And it's frankly, it's abusing the nature of completionists too, right? Those people who are obsessed with having everything and aren't happy unless they have everything. It just doesn't seem right. And at least like bundle some stuff or do something like that, like we are not infinite money banks, publishers. We are not your freaking piggy banks.
No, you're absolutely right. And you know what? I actually had not thought of the completionists out there. That's actually a really good point. I did not. That is actually really bad.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you just where you go like, why did you do this? It wasn't necessary, and you're just gonna hurt your audience by doing so. and also create, I'm sure, all this extra work for the developers as well.
Yeah, in the end, it's unfairness all around.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean the only people who are benefiting from it really are the publishers, right? You hear these stories about game companies forcing their employees to work these horrible hours and things, and you know it's mostly a sense of expectation, right? Like my new game will cost this much money, and I'm not willing to pay more or less, and publishers are going to try to say, well, what's the least I can give you and still get the most money, right? And that sucks for literally everyone else who's involved.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I really don't appreciate being nickel and dimed when I've paid $80 for, you know, to buy a game at launch, like forget about it. Like buying a game at launch is how you're buying it when it's the most expensive, right? So you're already, putting a lot of money out there when you could just wait 6 months to a year. Usually you start seeing, depending on the system.
Yeah.
There is going to be cheaper versions, particularly now where you don't have these as many of these tiny print runs and stuff is available digitally, like we live in the golden age of video game availability. So come on.
All right. I think that's a good spot to end it off. Come on. All right. All right. So that's going to be it for our discussion on DLC. I think our opinions were fairly similar to one another, which I was good, but I got to see a few things in a different light, which I thought was really cool. So thank you for all of that fun and wonderful discussion. Um, so I want to hear what you guys think about DLC, especially the paid types. What are you guys willing to pay for? What do you guys avoid? You can send us your thoughts. You can send it to us to our email at xpbillionaires@gmail.com. Or you can do it to us directly through our social media. You can find me on Twitter at billionairesxp, or you can find me on Instagram at Ray Thegram, although I will mostly be putting out Gunpla pictures on my Instagram going forward. I'm still willing to talk video games with you guys, so please, give me a shout. Sky, where can everyone find you?
I'm at SkyKnightXP on Twitter and SkyKnight.xp on Instagram.
And Mel, where can everyone find you?
I'm at Fitness Gamer or Feminist Gamer 3 on Twitter, and I run a D&D game on Twitch every Wednesday, and I write for Geek Girl Authority, so check any of that out.
All right. And don't forget to check out our website for quickfire reviews, written features, everything about how to get in touch with us will be on there as well. That's xpbillionaires.ca. And don't forget to check out our monthly newsletter on our coffee page, coffee.com/xpbillionaires. I've put one out for this month. It's available. I'm going to probably be doing a few less going forward. They won't necessarily be monthly, but that's all explained in the newsletter. So definitely check that out. And if you feel like sending us a donation, by all means, please do so. And if not, just spread the word of what we do here and let's grow the community. All right. So that's going to be it for us this week. And whether you love it or hate it, DLC is just that extra way for us to keep gaming. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.